Welcome to our homestead, friends. Today we are going to talk about the differences between homesteading and being off-grid. You'll be surprised. Let's talk about it. This is a topic that comes up often and people can get a little confused about it. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about what each one actually is. So let's start with homesteading. Homesteading basically is the pursuit of self-reliance. Now that self-reliant or self-sufficient lifestyle is important to a lot of people, and homesteading is giving yourself a goal of being completely independent at some point. And then we are going to talk about a little bit later if that is actually possible in today's world. Now the definition of being off-grid is a lack of connection to any public utility. But the word public utility can actually be expanded upon. So when you think of public utilities, you think of water and electricity and sewer mostly. But you also have to think about the grocery store grid, the food grid, the education grid, and maybe most importantly, the debt grid or money grid. So is anybody actually in today's world ever off-grid? Now, I personally do not want to be a hermit, and neither does my family. There are some people who can do that, and it's good for them, but not for us. If I owned 150 acres up in the mountains surrounded by public land, I could be off-grid if I didn't have any debt or any communication or anything like that. But for those of us who are Christians who know what the call is to go out and tell the world the gospel, then being completely disconnected from the grid, is that really the way to go? I don't think so. Now, being completely off the grid, and I don't think there are too many people that actually are, takes a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of resources. And are we there yet? No, we are not. But it is about the journey, it is about getting started on the journey, and it is about pushing forward toward those goals. And sometimes I hear, well, you're not a real homesteader, or you're not off-grid. Well, that's fine. I take everything in stride, but all of us are at a different point, a different path, or a different point along that path in the journey. And I want you to start your journey if you haven't. And if you have, continue on. Do not get discouraged. And here's one thing that people don't think about a lot is that you can start homesteading in an urban setting. It's about self-sufficient mindset, right? So you can start there. But if you start that journey in an urban setting, it will lead you out to a rural setting. So I don't want anybody to get stuck without having that end goal, because there's only a certain distance you can take that homesteading within the city limits. And in some places, it is much easier to homestead in the city and pull yourself off the grid. Say you put solar panels on your house and disconnect from the electrical grid, or I don't know too many cities that allow you to disconnect from the sewer. You might be able to disconnect from the water, but it is very, very difficult. So for anybody homesteading in the city, please expand your goal, expand the distance of that goal to be out in a rural setting. So again, being off-grid and homesteading are similar, but there are some differences. Now, when you are making that decision and setting that goal for your homesteading journey and being off-grid or taking yourself off most of the grid like us, you are going to need to build skills in many different areas. And those areas are food generation, water generation, power generation, building infrastructure, making an income if you still have debt, and then the general skills category, which encompasses a lot of different things, from knife sharpening to canning to whatever else. There is a lot in there. So always be a lifelong student. So when you're starting your homestead journey, I want you to be very cautious. And I do not want you, if you're moving from an urban setting out into a rural setting, I don't want you to get taken advantage of in terms of land, and I don't want you to rush it at all. And here's why. And that's because there is a lot of land that is not suitable for starting a self-sufficient homestead on. And that could be related to a lot of different things. For example, if your land has been logged and the erosion on the land is very severe in an area where you don't have much topsoil. Now, if that happens, then you're going to have to come up with more financial resources and bring in soil that you can plant in. And it will have to be a ton. It depends on how bad the land is scarred. Now, for us, we chose this property based on a couple of different things, but we did make some mistakes also. Now, for us, we didn't get the opportunity to start from scratch. I did have a house designed for us, an off-grid house, but things just worked out that we purchased a house. This property had a perfect house for us. It was fenced. The entire thing is fenced, and I have small kids, and I wanted fencing around it because the hogs in this area are extremely dangerous, and there's a lot of coyotes. Also, it had a barn and a stable. So if you can see it past the greenhouse right there. It had a barn and a stable already. It had fruit trees already, and it was half wooded. So we have some trees that we could use to burn in our wood stove. So having trees on your property is important because shade is important, and wind mitigation is important if you live in a windy area. For us here, having trees shade the house in certain directions is great because it cuts down on our AC costs. But having those trees in other places help shade the garden, so on and so forth. So buying straight flat pasture land is probably not going to be your best bet for a self-sufficient homestead unless you pour a ton of money into it. Now, we did make a mistake with this land in that it does not have a water source except for a well. So if possible, a water source is a really good thing to have. A well is a water source, but a natural water source, a spring or a pond or a stream or something like that, is a little bit better. And the way our property drains is actually a challenge too. I've been doing some mitigation of that, and I'll be doing videos about building swales in the future and water mitigation. So hopefully that'll be helpful as well. And then, of course, you've seen a lot of our solar videos. Hopefully, if you haven't, click at the top of the screen. But we just put that in this year. It took us 6 years to save up for it, and we got it in. Did it all by ourselves, and it has been a blessing for our small home. So like I said, things are a journey. It takes time, and it takes investment, and it takes dedication. But you have to really know what homesteading is and truly what being off-grid is so you can craft those goals properly. So for us Christians, are we truly self-sufficient? Well, I'd say no, because I'm always reliant on God for a lot. He gives me the opportunity to control what I can, but He controls the rest. We prayed a lot about our goals for being homesteaders, being more self-sufficient. So I'm going to actually do another video that more succinctly talks about our complete and whole journey out to this place. And then here's the question too. Are we truly ever off grid? Like I said, I don't want to be completely off all the grids because I don't want to be a hermit. But we removed ourselves from the debt grid except for the mortgage. We still have a mortgage on the house. So almost completely with that debt grid, all of our consumer debt is gone, right? We removed ourselves from the education grid, and we homeschool our children. We removed ourselves from the electrical grid, obviously, I just showed you that, and we don't have sewer out here in the countryside, so that one was automatic. We've got a septic system, but also we still are tied to the community well. We do have rainwater reclamation, and we are continuing to work on that. If you haven't seen those videos, click at the top of the screen. There will be more videos added to that series as we run that water to the house and add some other parts and things like that. We do have our well that came on the property, but that well does not serve the house. It serves all the irrigation, the barn, and everything else. We will and can connect to that in the future. So I'm not too worried about getting off the water grid, but I want you to think about getting off the grids that you can get off of. And it's not just about electricity, right? So get off those other grids first, like the debt grid and the education grid, and that will help you out immensely. I hope this really helped to define for you the difference between homesteading and off-grid and the similarities as well. Now I want you to go click on this video right here, which shows you exactly how we built this greenhouse. Have a beautiful, blessed day. We'll see you next time. Bye.